Hello and welcome to this special episode of Under Eagle Mountain Making Podcast. Hello, I'm Laura and this is a special episode because it's not a normal podcast episode. It's one where I'm just going to offer some ideas and inspiration for my knit-along that I am going to be hosting mainly over on Instagram from the 1st of September. It's going to be an autumn knit-along, so it'll run from the 1st of September to the 30th of November, so a full 3 months, and it's going to be making garments with patchwork quilts as the inspiration. That's the idea. So in this episode, I'm going to show a few of the things that I've come across and that I've found that hopefully, within that you will find something that you would like to make. I've got some garments, so some jumpers and cardigans, some smaller knits for the body, so hats, gloves, socks. I think I've got a shawl, and then some household objects, because not everybody wants to knit for their person, they might want to knit for their home, so I've included some ideas for that too. I have made a Ravelry bundle. My Ravelry is Under Eagle Mount. They don't give you enough letters, so I can't quite get the mountain, so it's just Mount. I'll write that down below so you can use that to find my Ravelry page and find the bundle. There is going to be a bit more in the bundle than there is today because I don't want to go through everything and take up all your day. And then there are a few things, just a couple that aren't on Ravelry, so I will list where I've found those as well down below. If there is something that I mentioned that you can't find or that you don't understand or you can't find me on Ravelry or whatever, just bob me a message here on YouTube and I will do my best to help you figure it out. So yeah, before we start, there are just a few bits of information for the knit-along. As I say, it'll be 3 months, cosy autumn knit-along. Whips will be included, so the main, some people had said to me, I'd really like to do it, but I don't think I could knock something out in 3 months. I'm quite busy, I don't get that much time. So firstly, whips are included. My main project for this knit-along is going to be my heirloom quilt cardigan, which I've started but definitely not finished. So, and I know there are quite a few people in a similar position with that project in particular, but just with projects in general, sometimes you start something new and the momentum takes you away from the thing that you were on, but you do want to get back to it. So it's nice sometimes to have a sort of kick up the bum to get back to it. So that's definitely what this knit-along is going to be for me and my quilt cardigan. So yeah, whips are absolutely permitted. Also, if you get to the end of that 3-month period and you haven't finished, that's fine. You will still be included in any prize draw. I'm trying to make it not sound really formal, but you can still be you'll still qualify, if that's the right word, to be in for a prize. It is very much just a be in it to win it type knit-along. You don't have to knit anything particular. You don't have to start it on the exact day. You don't have to finish it by the exact day. I just want it to be really friendly and we're really welcoming. So double dipping is absolutely fine. So if you're joining in a different knit-along, the obvious one for that would be Andrea Mowry's Rhinebeck knit-along. So I'll talk a bit about that pattern in particular, but her Rhinebeck sweater for this year has a quilt pattern as its inspiration, and she's running a knit-along. So, all you would have to do is add my hashtag to any posts that you have regarding that sweater, and you'd immediately be included in this knit-along as well. That's fine. And the other thing to say is, although it's a knit-along, If you are a crocheter and you want to join in, that's absolutely fine as well. You will definitely be included. I haven't included any patterns in the Ravelry bundle, and I won't talk about any crochet patterns today, but mainly because I'm not a crocheter and I don't know what makes a good pattern or a bad pattern. I don't know what's hard and what's not, and so forth. But if you, I've already had a lady contact me on YouTube to say, I want to join in, I'm thinking of this crochet pattern, is that all right? And I've just said, yeah, that's great, that looks lovely. And you know, sort of granny square type things do look very quilty, and obviously you get loads of crochet blankets, so that seems like a perfect match. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, basically I just want it to be really friendly, really cozy. There will be some prizes. As I think I said in my podcast episode, how many prizes and when those prizes are given out will largely depend on how many people join in. If there's just a couple of people join in, then I'll probably just do a prize right at the end to say thanks for joining in, and it'll just be, you know, a name out of a hat type decision about who wins. If lots of people join in, then there might be more prizes, and I might, you know, I might do one at the end of every month, or I might decide to do like a prize per category, so one per garment, one per accessory, one for any household things, and do it that way. Prizes, I want to kind of have a hand in the prizes. I don't just want to buy something and then give it away. So I might dye some wool. I was thinking maybe a sock set. There are quite a few socks with a sort of patchwork inspiration, so a sock set would be nice for that. Or there's I'm going to talk about a baby bonnet which uses fingering weight wool, so a sock set would be fine for that too. Of course you could use it for anything that is not patchwork inspired, but that was my thinking. Or sometimes in the past I've made little patchwork quilts that could either be used as a table mat, or I use one as a pot holder, or I've made small quilts for dolly quilts for my children, for other children. Mimi, who runs the Magic 3 Make Along for the past few years, I have made a dolly quilt to be given as a prize in that Make Along. So I could make something like that if that was, you know, if lots of people joined in and that was a nice thing to do, then I would be happy to do that out of my naturally dyed fabrics. So yeah, the prize aspect is still quite open and quite flexible, but I'm hoping that that would just be a bonus, and really the draw, the motivation for people to join in is because it'd be nice to do something as a group, as a community, and there are just loads of really good patchwork inspired knit patterns out there, so there's more and more actually all the time. So yeah, that's why I thought we'd do it. So as I said, I'm going to talk about sweaters first, or cardigans. Obviously I am doing the Heirloom quilt cardigan. That is by Catherine Seeberger. I'll put a picture up. You'll have seen that before here, and I'm sure all over the place. It's a great pattern. It's knit sort of modularly, so you knit each of the star blocks separately first, and then you seam them up, and you pick up for the arms and for the button band and the ribbon at the bottom. For my size, there are 3 sizes. They have quite a bit of positive ease, and actually there is a different chart for the 3 different sizes, because the size of the block is slightly different for the 3 sizes, and also how many blocks and the configuration of the blocks is different. So I am doing size 1. So I have a smaller block than like the next size up, I think, but I have more of them. I think I need 36 in total, and so far I have 24, so I'm like 2/3 of the way there. So I would really, I'm laughing before I've even said it, but I'm really hoping to try and get the blocks done by the end of September. So maybe some over the summer holidays, because they're quite a nice small project to work on, even if it's warm, and then maybe into September, like the start of the knit along, will give me you know, a spurt of energy to finish it. So I'll just show a few of my favourites. I am knitting mine in Hearth DK, which is a yarn by Emma Robinson at Woolly Mammoth Fibre Company. She naturally dyes all of her yarns, and this particular base is a grey base, so it gives the yarns a really lovely sort of muted, kind of earthy quality to them, and I just think they're really beautiful. So I won't show you all of them because that might end up being a bit boring. But yeah, I'm really pleased with them. I really, really want the cardigan. So that is like my main inspiration for this whole knit along, is to get my cardigan finished. So that's that. Another sweater that I've already mentioned is the framed sweater. That is by Andrea Mowry, and that's her 2024 Rhinebeck sweater. So there's a picture of that gone up. And yeah, I'm sure you've seen that all over Instagram and on YouTube. And if you're already planning on doing that, then just add my hashtag on, which will be knit patchwork cal, K-A-L, all lowercase, all one word. I don't know if the case matters, I'm not entirely sure, but I'll do it all lowercase, all one word. I've checked that there isn't one currently. There are similar ones, but there isn't exactly that one, knit patchwork cal. So hopefully post to that and it will find me. So yeah, just add that to the bottom of anything you do for Andrea Mowry's Knit Along, which has started. It started at the weekend, and you'll just automatically be included in the chance for a prize in this Knit Along and in all the chat, hopefully, that will happen on Instagram, and obviously some in the comments here. The next one I'm going to show you, I'll put up, is the Hesper cardigan, and that's by Amy Christophers. And it is, the body of the cardigan is quite plain, but it has this yoke of stars, very much like a patchwork quilt star. And it's mosaic knitting. So if you liked the patchwork star motif from the heirloom quilt cardigan, but you didn't want to do stranded colour work, this is mosaic knitting, so slip stitches. So that might be easier. I don't know. I've never done mosaic knitting. I'm quite tempted by this pattern, although I think it's fingering weight or maybe sport weight, so it would take a bit more time. Amy Christophers also did the whole pressed flowers series. I think there's a jumper, there's a slip over, there's a cardi, there's a hat, there are socks, there's a cowl, I think there's a shawl. There's loads and loads of different patterns with that same slip stitch motif. And although I hadn't initially thought of it when I was thinking it was the Hesper cardigan that had my attention, actually that also would, I think, be perfectly brilliant for a Patchwork-inspired knit along, because there is a patchwork block called a 9 patch, which is just like 3x3 squares. So there are 9 squares in 3 rows of 3 squares. But quite often the colours that are chosen, they're arranged to look like a flower. So if you watch the first episode here, I think, or if you followed me on Instagram for a while, I've been making a quilt called the Blossom Quilt. I'll see if I can put a picture up. And that is exactly that. It's flowers made up from 9 patches. And so that's exactly the same shape as the flower on the pressed flowers series. So you could do any of those things. And I bet some of you out there have at least one of those patterns started and not finished. So use this as your motivation, get that finished, get the hashtag on and be in it for a prize. Or it doesn't even have to be finished, does it? It just has to be like worked on, progressed. All right, the next thing I'm going to talk about, sets of garments really, is not a specific pattern. It's a designer who has taken a lot of his inspiration from quilts, and that's Kaif Fassett. He does a lot of quite fancy, quite intricate, very jazzy colour work garments, and some of them look very patchworky, and some of them have, he gets inspiration from patchwork, and from tiles and mosaics and all sorts, but some of them are very explicitly inspired by patchwork. One such is the Lady of the Lake top, sweater, pullover, whatever. I'll put a picture up. So the Lady of the Lake is a patchwork quilt block design. This is available on Ravelry, I think. I'm pretty sure. It has a small size range. I think it's just small, medium, large. It only goes up to 50 inches, which is not massive. It is an old pattern. I think that's the reason for that. So obviously something like the Heirloom Quilt Cardi, if you wanted either lessies, so a smaller version, or if you were outside of the top size in that, because there's only 3 sizes there, but because it's modular, you knit squares, you could just knit more squares and get yourself a bigger cardigan, or knit fewer squares and get yourself a much smaller cardigan. So that is really easy to adapt, despite the fact it only has a small size range, although there is a huge amount of positives. It covers, each size covers a big wide size range, but this Lady of the Lake doesn't, and unless you were super duper at knitting, I don't even know where you begin to try and figure out how to increase the size for that. But I did want to mention it because it is so obviously inspired by quilts. And then I have one of Kay Fassett's books called Glorious Knitting. And really, I'm not going to say never, but I don't think any time soon am I going to be knitting anything out of these books. But I love looking at them. How this man's mind works, I don't know, it's just great. So I thought I'd show a few just as like inspiration. So that, can you see? That's called Tumbling Blocks. And again, that is a quilt pattern. In fact, yeah, it shows on this page, it shows an example of the quilt. So that's a really direct, explicit link. And then there are others in here that just, you can tell that they're kind of quilt inspired. So there's this one called Large Diamonds, sort of tessellated right angle triangles, basically. There's this one, just checking that you can see it. There you go, Zigzag. And the zigzag pattern looks really like a quilt design called A Streak of Lightning, which is where you have squares that have got triangles that are half dark and half light, and you arrange them so you have a dark zigzag and a light zigzag and a dark zigzag, much like this. So that's the knitting chart, and that looks very much like a Streak of Lightning quilt, which I made. I think it was the first quilt I ever made. Was this? I don't know where it is. I think it's in the boot of a car, or like, I don't know, in a shed in the garden or something. And then there's this one. I think he calls it Steps, but it looks very much like a quilt pattern called Around the World, which is just lots of squares that are arranged in sort of, roughly in concentric circles to create this design. So if you didn't know where to start, if you happen to have one of these books, or I got mine off eBay, I think for 10 quid a few years ago, but I see them in charity shops. If you just want to look at what might one day be possible in the world of patchwork knitting, Kay Fassett's just like a really interesting look, basically, even if you didn't fancy doing something that intricate. It's just amazing to look at all his ideas. The last one I'm going to talk about isn't on Ravelry. It's in fact not actually a pattern at all. It's a tutorial or some guidance, and that is the Log Cabin Sweater by Julia, or it might be Yulia, from Me and Simone on Instagram. She knits these kind of freestyle, free-form log cabin blocks. Again, a log cabin, if you're not a quilter, a log cabin is a really traditional patchwork quilt block. And she creates these sweaters where she has a log cabin block on the front, and she kind of knits the square first, the block first, and then she adds the side panels and the top and the bottom with the ribbon, and then she knits a back to match the same size and shape, and joins it in the shoulders. And sometimes she just puts ribbon on to make a vest, or sometimes she puts sleeves on to make a jumper. She's done them for herself, and she's done quite a lot for her daughter. She's been doing it for years, and I think she gets a lot of requests to come up with a knitting pattern, but she said she didn't want to do that. She wasn't a pattern writer, and each one she makes is a bit different, and she uses scraps, so she doesn't know about yardage and stuff like that. But last year, just over a year ago, I think, she did a knit along where she kind of did some videos which she saved in her stories on Instagram to talk about kind of like how she does it, and how she, the type of yarn that she uses, and she just goes through a basic process. And she did a knit along where lots of us made a log cabin garment at the same time as her, using her sort of general principles. So I did two. I did one for my youngest. I'll try and put a picture up. I can't show it you because he had it on last week and spilled his dinner all down it, and I've not washed it yet. So that's where that is. And I also did one for my daughter. And honestly, they're probably the two things I've knitted for them that get the most compliments. People really, really like them. So what I have got to show you is, this was kind of like a practice one that I did, like a practice swatch, just figuring out the process of knitting a log cabin. Julia doesn't tell you exactly how she does hers, but she just says find a tutorial on YouTube, find one on Google, and there are lots. So the way I did mine was I knitted the square, and when I'd done as many rows as I wanted to make it square, I then cast off all but the last stitch. So say I kept that stitch on the needle, and then I turned it round, and that stitch then became my first stitch, and I picked up one stitch for every garter bump on the square, and then I knitted back, and that stitch that remained, that one red stitch that remained on the needle, is then knitted together with the last stitch in the new colour. And then you keep going, and then when you're ready, again you cast off. Okay, I must have gone this way when I was doing it. And you cast off all but the last stitch. You then pick up all for the next colour, and on you go, round and round and round. If that's not clear, I'm very sorry. I just looked it up on YouTube, I think, and found how to do it. And there are different ways of doing it, so you could, if that didn't suit, you could find one that suited you better. So yeah, it was lovely. And there's a really good, I think it is hashtag, I think it's called Log Cabin Sweater Cal, K-A-L, Cal. And I think if you look at that hashtag, there are loads and loads of different ones. They're really beautiful, and that would be a really nice one to do. So that's me and Simone. I will write that down at the bottom because that's not included in the Ravelry bundle. Okay, so that's all I'm going to talk about for sweaters, because I've been going for a while now. I don't want to take up your whole afternoon or morning or whatever. So next I've got accessories. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the Sawtooth Bonnet, which is a pattern for young babies by Fox and Folk. And I think I might do this one in the knit along as well, because I know a couple of people that are due to have babies this year, and this pattern came out once my youngest baby was out of like the bonnet stage, and I felt sad because this is so pretty. And I think also if you didn't want to do stranded colour work, if you didn't want to do mosaic knitting, and you just wanted to do something small, this would be a good one, because I think you just knit each of the pieces separately and then seam them together to make the central star, and then you just pick up and knit the rest of the bonnet. So that would be a good one. And I said earlier about a sock set, this is the one that I think you could easily do with a sock set. So if you have one of those lying around and there is a baby in your life, or, you know, due to become into your life in some way, this would be a good one to do. A hat for an adult is also called the Sawtooth hat, and that is by Caroline Vogel, I think is how you pronounce it. I'll put a picture here. And so that's just like a nice beanie, and it's got 2 rows. Oh no, I think it's got more than 2. It's got a number of rows of that sort of sawtooth star, which is a really traditional patchwork quilt pattern. And it's got a number of rows of that, and I think it's brilliant. So that's that one. And then there are 2 sock patterns that also have that sort of sawtooth star motif. There is the Quilt Block Socks by Fabrications Ottawa, and there is, I'm looking at my notes, Once Upon a Quilt Socks by Renard Endormi. I'll put these in Ravelry if you can't quite get what I'm saying. They're in the bundle. The first one, the Quilt Block Socks, has that sort of star tooth. It's 2 colour work. The Once Upon a Quilt Socks, I think, is 3 colour work. I think that central square in the middle is split up into 4 squares of 2 different colours, and then you've got a different colour for the background. So I think that's 3 colours, but it'd be very easy to change. If you liked those, you could just do that central square all 1 colour. And then I'm rushing through these a little bit because I don't want to go on forever. But there's 2 hats, 2 pairs of socks, and then there is a shawl. There are a number of shawls, but the one I'm going to talk about is the Clint shawl, and that is by Natasha Hornby, who is also Moonstruck Knits on Ravelry. And this is like a big boomerang shawl. It's in fingering weight, and it's a big shawl. Oh, pardon, I can hear the boys running up the stairs. It's knit in fingering weight, and it's a big shawl, so it would be a big project. It would take time. But it's not knitted all the way like across like this. It's not stranded colour work. It's knitted modularly. So I think you start with the star and then you add bits on, but you pick up to knit the next bit all the time. There's no seaming. You don't knit pieces and seam it together. So if you don't fancy that, like with the heirloom quilt cardigan, this might be a better one for you. I really like it. She says it's inspired by patchwork quilts, but I wonder with the name if it's also a bit inspired by Clint Eastwood. It's a bit like a cowboy, has that sort of cowboy feel to it. So yeah, that's my very, very quick roundup of patchwork inspired accessories. There are more in the bundle and there's more out there. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about are household objects. And really, I'm going to point you in the direction of Laura Penrose at Penrose Knits. Loads of you will have seen her sweet shop blanket, which is basically like if you were making that with fabric, if you were making a patchwork quilt, you'd call that half square triangles. And that's when you have a square that is divided across the hypotenuse into 2 different colours. And she's got it laid out in a regular pattern. So again, it's sort of light half, dark, coloured half, light half, coloured half. But you could arrange those in any way that you wanted. And I think she picks up, I think it's all knitted seamlessly. So you pick up to knit for the next one. It's not sewn together at the end. She's also done the Stella quilt cushion, which again is half square triangles, but they're arranged. I think there are 2 different arrangements in the pattern, so for 2 different types of star. And I think she's just released a Stella quilt blanket, which is a blanket with all of those big stars motifs on. So she is a really good place to look for knitted quilts. Actually, on Ravelry, if you type in quilt, there are an unbelievable amount of knitted quilts. So they look exactly like patchwork quilt blocks, all different blocks, all different patterns, but they're knitted blankets. So if you really wanted to do that, have a look. There's loads and loads there. If you wanted to do something on a smaller scale, I have found these dishcloth patterns. I'll put a picture up. Lots of different quilt blocks, knitted in 2 colours of dishcloth cotton. This is by Laura Law, and I am quite tempted by those. I don't, it would take a chunk of time out of my other knitting to knit a dishcloth, which sometimes feels a bit, but I do have dishcloth cotton, so they're nice. They'd be good Christmas presents. I'm not saying it too loudly, it's only the end of July, but they'd be really good. So yeah, that's where I'm going to stop. There is more on the Ravelry, like I said, and there is more out there besides. Another good place to look, if you just happen to be in a charity shop or a second-hand bookshop and you go and look through them, I've got this, I'll show it. You often find books like this and you think, that looks dated, I would never. Well, just have a look, because look inside here. I'm not, a lot of them are really dated, a lot of them are quite horrible, the patterns in this book, but that one I really like. And whilst I don't recognise an exact quilt block in there, it does look very much like a quilt block called Broken Dishes. I think that the quilt block doesn't have that horizontal line. I would very much like to knit that for my youngest. I don't know that I will, but sort of 90s and 80s, a bit like the K Facet, that's the era that they're from. Quite a lot of those books will have patchwork-inspired patterns in, so just have a quick peek. I've also got, I don't know where it is, it's somewhere on the shelf over there. I do have an old knitting book from like 1981 or something that my auntie gave me that has a jumper that is all one colour, but it's squares of different textures. Yeah, each square is a different texture. So that would be, you do get quilts that are all one colour, or like whole cloth quilts. So it's just one sheet, but then it's divided up by different stitch patterns for the quilting. So that would be great too. If you just wanted to knit something in one colour, but you wanted to have different texture. And the other thing I thought of was just like a checkerboard. We had a family party here at the weekend, and one of my cousins was talking to me about he really would like a beanie that was just in a checkerboard, a dark colour and a light colour. Well, that could be done as part of a quilt knit along, a quilt-inspired knit along, because you do get quilts that are just 2 coloured checkerboards. That's like a really common quilt pattern. So you can make it really simple if you want to. It doesn't have to be super duper K Facet complicated, and it doesn't have to be something huge like a quilt. It could be a hat or a baby bonnet or a dishcloth. So I really, really hope that you found something that interests you and something that inspires you. If there's something else that you know about, let me know here in the comments, but also once I get it up and running on Instagram, you could let me know there. And so that way people, if you put it in a comment rather than a DM, then everybody else can look at it too, and we can all kind of inform and inspire each other, and that's kind of the point. Okay, I will try and get this up before I go. I've got like 3 days before we go on holiday, and I've got like the packing to do, the house to tidy. We've got people coming in and out while we're away to look after animals and water plants and stuff, so I'm thinking I can't leave it an absolute tip, but the weather is beautiful finally, so I'm finding it very difficult to be in the house. But I have done this. It was important to me to get it done before we went away, because when I come back it'll be nearly September, have a week or so before September, so I wanted to get it out so people can get ready, get prepared, get planned, get excited, and I hope you are. And yeah, I will see you again soon. Take care. Bye.